Just ahead on ABC6 News, first at 4, a nightmare in Bristol for 2 college students, followed by a naked man. Tonight, police naming that suspect. Plus, Israel's plea this evening to Palestinians as its military gears up to invade the Gaza Strip. And what Rhode Island leaders are now proposing for the homeless this winter. Those stories and more coming up in moments on ABC6 News, first at 4.
This is Southern New England's trusted news source, ABC6 News, first at 4.
Our top story at 4. We now know who a Bristol police officer shot outside of the station last night. Thanks for joining us on First at 4. I'm John DeLuca. Police tell us that naked suspect was following 2 young women in their vehicle and then tried to ram their vehicle repeatedly in the parking lot of that station. Providence Now reporter Daniel Koch joins us now live from Bristol's police department with the incredible details. Daniel, what do you have?
John, we learned over the last 2 hours that that suspect, who is now in custody, is a 39-year-old man from Rehoboth named Mark Rinn. Last we checked, he was being treated for gunshot wounds at Rhode Island Hospital. At this time, we don't know what charges exactly he's facing from that terrifying scenario out of Bristol from last night. But what we know is that police say he followed 2 college girls by car last night from Colt State Park, about 2 miles away from where I'm standing, where they say an incident occurred. The 2 women told police that the man was naked in his car and making hand gestures next to them at the park when they eventually took off. Now, Rinn allegedly followed and flashed his high beams at the 2 who made their way to the police station. And when the 2 pulled into the station's lot, the man reportedly rammed their car several times until an officer rushed out from inside.
The suspect continued to ram that vehicle, came at the sergeant with the vehicle and struck the girls again, and the sergeant fired 2 shots into the vehicle. I have to credit the sergeant. His actions were heroic, and these 2 young ladies could have felt into a difficult demise situation based on the surroundings. So the sergeant's actions were certainly heroic.
Now, police say those 2 women only sustained minor injuries at this time. Bristol Police, Rhode Island State Police, as well as the Attorney General are all investigating this scenario. For now in Bristol, I'm Daniel Coates, ABC6 News.
All right, Daniel, thank you. Now to our continuing coverage of Israel at war. It's now warning residents of Gaza to evacuate as it continues airstrikes against Hamas targets. Officials in Gaza say more than 1,700 people have been killed, with thousands more injured. Here's ABC's Inez de la Catera.
Tensions mounting amid the prospects of a ground offensive as Israel continues its airstrikes in Gaza. Israeli forces gathering at the border with Gaza. Officials urging residents of Gaza City to evacuate their homes and move south. The IDF saying it wants to avoid harming civilians.
We are going to destroy Hamas infrastructures, Hamas headquarters, Hamas military, and take this phenomena out of Gaza and out of thereof.
Israel's retaliatory strikes coming in response to Saturday's attack by Hamas terrorists. Men, women, and children brutally murdered, others taken hostage. According to the IDF, Israeli special forces have already carried out raids inside Gaza, trying to locate hostages, but their presence not part of a possible ground offensive. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have already been driven from their homes. Gaza now without power, water, food, or medicine. Hamas is telling Gaza residents to stay where they are.
This is the calm before the great disaster, where thousands of people started to displace to the southern part of the Gaza Strip, thinking it will be a safer place for them, while other hundreds and thousands stayed there just waiting for the upcoming death.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been meeting with Mideast leaders, including Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas.
Our focus now is on helping to create safe zones, and we're doing that with the leading international organizations. We're doing that engaged with Israel.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also said preventing a new front from opening up continues to be a focal point of his meetings. Meanwhile, the White House says President Biden has spoken to the families of the 14 Americans still unaccounted for. Inez de la Catera, ABC News, Tel Aviv, Israel.
Well, at this point, at least 27 Americans are presumed to have been killed in the war between Israel and Hamas. That includes 67-year-old Cindy Flash, a dual citizen from Minnesota, and her husband, 66-year-old Igal Flash, who was born in Israel. Their daughter saying They had just moved back to Israel when men broke into their home. The couple was able to hide out in a safe room, but no one has heard from them since. Well, we've also learned an Israeli shell that landed in South Lebanon killed a journalist, injuring 6 others. A Reuters videographer was killed while providing a live signal. Stay with ABC6 News for updates on Israel. We'll have continuing coverage for you on air and online at abc6.com. Now to an ABC6 News follow-up. Bike Newport releasing a statement that includes a list of demands following a deadly incident between a biker and a box truck earlier this week. Kayla Watson was riding her bike to work when she was run over by a box truck at the intersection of Admiral Kalbfus Road and Hillside Avenue. She died at Newport Hospital. Now, members of Bike Newport are calling on the city to make changes to the intersection for the safety of all bikers.
The number one priority is the traffic cameras. You know, traffic cameras are proven to just change people's behavior. And because of that, when there's a sign that says cameras are present, people just don't do those things. And there's so much of that activity. There's so much of this, bad driving behaviors at this intersection we know that that'll be an immediate help.
Freeman says they're also asking for a separated bike path in that area and having the DOT reroute trucks from the Pell Bridge realignment project away from the intersection. Rhode Island officials meeting this morning to address the housing plan for the state's homeless population. Providence Now reporter Caitlin Gelhaus has that story.
Rhode Island leaders met Friday morning to outline the plan for this winter to shelter those experiencing homelessness in the Ocean State. Housing Secretary Stephen Pryor explaining their 3 pillars to this strategy: expand, prevent, and collaborate, saying in October of 2022, they were at 789 beds, and now they project going into this winter, they'll be at 1,370 beds. Faith leaders also in attendance at the meeting, contributing their efforts to the ongoing battle the state faces each year. The state making negotiations to use spaces in order to house more people, and Governor McKee adding there is no perfect solution to this crisis, but they will do everything in their power to help those in need.
A groundbreaking ceremony this morning for an affordable housing development in East Greenwich. Senator Reed, along with Governor McKee and other state leaders, joining together for that ceremony right at Frenchtown Road 1 and 2, which will create 63 mixed income housing units. The complex will be a 4-story building with community spaces, including a courtyard, lounge, and wellness center. First at 4, let's take a live look over the beautiful city of Providence on this spectacular Friday fall day. Let's get a check on the forecast now with Providence Now Chief Meteorologist Jeff Danson.
Well, listen, everybody has their definition of perfect weather, right? Well, for me, this is about as good as it gets. 10 out of 10 today. We've got not a cloud in the sky. It's a little breezy. You can see I probably need a little bit more hairspray, but yeah, tons of sun. A little bit cooler than the last couple of days, but to me, again, you got to account for a little bit of a sweat factor, especially if you want to go outside, do some yard work, go for a run. I can't say enough good about today. Now, that weekend storm is going to try to put a little bit of a damper on the weekend, but if you've been paying attention the last couple of days, you know probably by now that we're looking at drier weather than not. So we'll bring you the latest information on that coming up and what the next week has in store as well. Happy Friday, everyone.
New at 4, while pandas and red foxes are on their way out of local zoos, the Franklin Park Zoo in Boston is welcoming in a new species, the African painted dog. They say the endangered species will be located near the giraffes where the spotted hyenas used to be. How Rhode Island of a saying is that, where the hyenas used to be. You can now visit the 2 African painted dogs, sisters Matakwi and Moremi. Love to see them. Pheasant stocking begins this weekend in Rhode Island for the upcoming hunting season. Spokesperson for the DEM saying they stock pheasants for the public to hunt in select management areas all throughout the state of Rhode Island. After this weekend, the DEM will stock the pheasants twice a week until early December. If you'd like more information, just go to the DEM's website. Developing news now at 4 o'clock. A man was stabbed to death behind a grocery store in Providence last night. According to Providence police, the body was behind the Stop and Shop right on Manton Avenue. Police have not released his name or any information about the suspects or what may have led up to that murder. Turning now to national news at 4 o'clock. Police arresting a 17-year-old in connection with the mass shooting that injured 5 people at Morgan State University. The teenager is now facing multiple charges of attempted murder. There's also a warrant out for another suspect, 18-year-old Jovan Williams. That's in connection to the incident on the campus in Baltimore. Still to come on ABC 6 News. First at 4, union workers reaching a tentative deal with Kaiser Permanente. That means for the largest healthcare strike ever in this country. Plus, day 10 with no speaker. The latest struggle on Capitol Hill as Republicans find themselves back at square one. You're watching ABC 6 Southern New England.